Okay, I've tried to meet everybody on the way in. I'm Nancy Horn. Come on up here. Get up here. This is my best friend, Chris. And we've been coming to the pond since we were little babies, which is forever and ever ago, because we're old. But I just wanted to say welcome to our meeting. We're the co-founders. Chris is president of Friends of Peters Pond. I'm the treasurer. And we have in the back Nancy Silva. She's manning the beautiful mug station, and her husband, Joe. We have Jeff in the back. He's our technology chief technical officer. So any tech you see here and on the website, that's all Jeff. And then we have one board member who stays in California. They have 4 daughters, so they see 3 of them during this time of the year, and he'll be back. His name is Lee. But I just wanted to introduce the board to you before I forgot. And we have Barbara, who always is a wonderful volunteer. She's at the door. She's one of our neighbors too. So, okay, I'm gonna get started. Thanks, Chris.
Sure.
Does everybody
I'll be up in a minute.
Thanks, okay. When you came in, I know you have this, but okay, I was a teacher, so I wanna make sure that you have all your materials before we start. So, does everybody have an agenda?
Yes.
Okay, does everybody have a pen?
Yes.
If you don't have one, we have some available for you in the basket. So just go grab that because you might want it. And now's the time. So get yourself a run and implement. All right. We try.
We try.
Because I'm going to say, you're going to want to write this down, and then people get up and go get a pen. So let's do it now. Okay. All right. So, I want to welcome you guys. This is our second meeting. We had our first meeting last February, so that was 2022.
Yep.
It seems like it was farther away. Welcome. So this is our second annual meeting, and we're going to have one every spring. So please remember, around this time of the year is when we'll have our meeting. Okay, so put a little asterisk in your calendar. We'll save the date. If you have someone coming, or you know of anyone who needs non-stairs access, we have a door right at the end of this hallway. It just pops out right to the lower parking lot. Parking is upstairs, as you know, because you've all arrived with your cars. And we have our restrooms. There's locker room and restrooms to the left when you come down in the hallway. And if you're not in love with that moist locker room smell, you can go up the stairs into the non-locker room bathrooms, okay? It's up to you. Okay, I wanted to just show you a couple of things on the agenda before we get started. So you'll notice you've got your schedule, and I just want to go over that really quick because I love to be on time and I love to get you guys out of here when we said. So 2 o'clock to 2:05, that's me. We're going to do Chris next. She's going to talk about all things Peters Pond, so all the things that have happened this last year since our last meeting. I'm going to be discussing the business side of Friends of Peters Pond, which is really exciting. I love it. Then we're going to have Andrew Gottlieb. How many of you know who Andrew Gottlieb is? Okay, cool. So he is the executive director of the Association to Preserve Cape Cod, and I'll have a formal introduction when he arrives, but that's our speaker. And then at the end, and you might have the end on your second page. So if you flip up top, just about the end, we're going to have a raffle. And you can also talk to us in the back or mix and mingle. So there'll be time for questions after each section, but I wanted you to know if you'd like to talk to us about something that you're concerned about more on the side instead of in a group, or if you would like to ask questions or you just want to meet us, we'll be in the back. We're not just rushing out of here at exactly 3:15. So please take that time to just get to know each other, eat the snacks that we have available. Okay, and then on that same page, there's Andrew. Yay, Andrew. All right. So on this last page, you'll notice some, who knows what these are?
QR code.
Yes, they're QR code. Chris gets a prize. So QR code for each of these links. So that means if you have a smartphone, and many of us do, how you use this, I'm just going to go through it because I'm not going to assume, all right? You open up your photo app, and you hold it up, hover over the QR code. And it'll come up with a little link. I'm not going to do it now, but what you'll do is it'll pop up a little yellow link, and then you touch it on your screen, and it takes you magically to the place where you can learn more about that item, okay? So we have different things. We have reports. We have a Mashpee letter to the town. We have all kinds of neat links in here. And then at the very bottom, this is a really important link, which is your email address. We have our little mission statement there. Some of you are already Friends of Peters Pond members because you filled out the contact sheet on our website. Some of you aren't yet, and that is great because we want everybody to become a member. I'm going to talk about why we want to be members in a minute. But that's your contact sheet. So see how it says rip it off here? Yeah, you can just write your email up here if you want.
Yeah, theirs looks like
this.
there,
very good. So yours looks like that. It's all on one sheet. Okay, and you might also want to write a question on this sheet with your pen, or concerns, or any notes that you want to keep track of. At the end of the meeting, we have a little basket over by Barbara. We'd love to take those sheets and save them in the basket so we can put you into the mailing list, okay? Any questions? All right, moving on. Okay. Also, we're going to be talking about volunteer opportunities. You can also use this form if you're interested in joining us for any activity, any volunteer project. If you want to be on the board, we're going to talk about that in a minute. So don't lose that sheet. At the end of our meeting, we're going to have a raffle drawing, and we have a special donation opportunity. Did everybody get a business card with a number on it? Yeah. Who does not have a business card with their number on it? Everybody has one? Okay, that is your magic number. Pray over it because you might win. We're going to do that drawing at the end. Also, I wanted to let everybody know we are recording this for our YouTube channel, so just be aware. So I'm going to make sure I don't say anything I shouldn't. So just remember we are recording. Therefore, if you guys can be sure when one of the speakers is up here to refrain from any crosstalk, which I know is so hard because I am an interrupter and I get a lot of ideas, but I just write it down instead of saying it to the next person. Okay, questions. I already talked about that. So if you have any questions, you can write them down. We're going to have a portable microphone that will pass around. We want to make sure that we can hear you for the recording. Even though you can speak loudly, we're still going to give you a microphone to talk in. Okay. All right, right now I'm going to introduce Chris. She's going to come up and talk about all things Peters Pond. Thanks, Chris.
Peters Pond. Thank you. Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah, give her a round of applause. She worked really hard.
Thank you. Okay, I'm on. I got a hot mic. Thank you.
Somebody forgot okay, stay there. I'll bring it over.
Thanks, Joe.
Maybe I can turn like this so I can see everyone. See over this thing here. Welcome. Thank you guys all for it's a beautiful, beautiful day, and I just want to thank all of you for leaving your homes to come here and talk about Peters Pond with us. Never ever could I have imagined that 20 years ago or even 5 years ago that I'd be standing up here talking to you all about the declining health of our beloved Peters Pond. Worries about our pond's health and was the catalyst to form our group just one short year ago. So we're only 1 year old. I'm Chris Dennis. I am currently the president of the Friends of Peters Pond Advocacy Group. I want to thank you all for coming and showing your support by wanting to learn more about Peters Pond, our organization, and the state of the waters on Cape Cod with our guest speaker, Andrew Gottlieb, who will be up here in a few minutes. I want to kind of start off with the top 5 issues that I think are affecting Peters Pond. And then after that, I'm going to hand it over to Nancy, and she's going to go over some things that have to do with our organization. All righty. Let's see. Okay, cyanobacteria. On the slides up here, you can see this is an example of a couple of ponds that are local to the Cape. I believe the one on the left is Mill Pond, and I think the one on the right is Santuit Pond. But this is an example of what a cyanobacteria bloom looks like. Cyanobacteria starts from an overgrowth of excess nitrogen and phosphorus in the water, and it can cause these harmful algae blooms. These blooms are not only dangerous to pets and humans, but this bacterial algae can cause certain plants and fish to die from a lack of oxygen. What's important that we do with Peters Pond is Peters Pond did have a bloom in 2021. Fortunately, we did not have one last year, but we could easily have another one this year. So what's important, we found, Nancy and I thought we really wanted to make sure that Peters Pond was sampled and we keep track of the bacteria, this type of cyanobacteria that's in our pond. So this is very important, and the Association to Preserve Cape Cod, which is also known as APCC, if you hear me use that acronym, has been an integral part in making sure that many ponds across the Cape are sampled and tested for cyanobacteria during the summer. Here in Sandwich, last year Nancy and I volunteered to collect the water samples for Snake Pond and for Peters Pond, and we deliver it to a local drop-off point. Okay, once it reaches the APCC lab, they they observe it under a microscope, and they log any data, and they post the results on their website. So they have an interactive map. Anytime you're wondering what the cyanobacterial level is in your pond, Snake Pond, you go on their website and you actually can click on the pond, and it will tell you the level of cyanobacteria and if you're in a dangerously high level, moderate level, or safe level. If the cyanobacteria comes back as a high or dangerous level, the APCC notifies the local Board of Health in Sandwich. Board of Health will then post an advisory, and they also post it on their website. I'm really happy to say that we have 2 new sampling volunteers this year. We have John Boudreau, and there he is. John, thank you very much. And Ron Peichel. Ron is not here, but his wife is. Thank you so much. They'll be doing the sampling for us this year, and I just want to encourage any of you that are interested in this. It's only it's bi-weekly. The sampling is only every other week. It's not a huge commitment. It takes about an hour and a half to do both ponds and drop off the samples. So we're going to be looking for people to back up, you know, Ron and John when they can't do it, and we're also going to be looking for people next summer. And I think APCC in general is probably looking for volunteers as well for other ponds. Okay. All right, satellite imagery. Another way that we monitor pond health for cyanobacteria is by using satellite imagery. This was really exciting that Nancy and I learned about this last summer. Currently, the Cape Cod Commission is working with NOAA and their satellites to take high-quality images of our ponds. These satellites are trying to capture a very specific color in the water that can predict the presence of cyanobacteria. To help correlate this data, the Cape Cod Commission needs volunteers back here on Earth to take water clarity measurements using a Secchi disc. And this is an example right here of our 2 volunteers that are actually standing at the back of the room, and they're also board members, Nancy Silva and Joe Silva. So what happens is, this is simply a flat black and white disc, and it is used to visually measure water clarity. After a short training, Nancy and Joe use the Secchi disc approximately once a week. They try to correlate that on the exact same day that the satellite comes over our pond. So they actually have a schedule of when the satellite makes its way around, and they know on that day that the satellite's coming over so that they have the same log data from the Secchi disc as they do from the satellite pictures. I encourage you at the end of the meeting to talk to Nancy and Joe more about this. And if any of you live on the pond, if you have access to a boat especially, because these measurements are taken at the deepest part of the pond, We would love to have backup volunteers for this, or perhaps maybe volunteer to do it next summer. Stormwater and boat ramps. Okay, did you happen to know that 20% of the excess nitrogen and phosphorus that is polluting our ponds is from stormwater? Stormwater, when it rains, the stormwater, just see if I can get this to go here, get these three going. Here we go. The stormwater, it runs across the pavement, rooftops, and our fertilized lawns down into the pond. Much of this water funnels its way down to our boat ramps. To solve this problem, the stormwater needs to be diverted away from the pond to catch basins or a place where it can slowly percolate into the ground. APCC, along with the Mass Department of Fish and Game, has received some special grants to help mitigate this problem at our boat ramps. APCC did a design review of over 20 different ramps in 10 different Cape Towns. And at that point, they only had funding available to help 4 ramps. Lucky for us, Peters Pond Oakcrest Town Boat Ramp, which is right next to this building, was one of the ramps that is going to receive the funding and is going to be, they're going to be able to mitigate the stormwater off of that ramp. So we're very pleased to have that ramp make the list. Our other state boat ramp off of John Ewer Road, which is the state ramp on the other side of the pond, which most of you are probably very familiar with. And even there's ramps over at the campground. But I do have some information at the back of the room in the binder on what needs to be done to help mitigate the stormwater problem at the state ramp. It's a little bit more complicated, but I would love to talk to anybody, or perhaps maybe we can get a small committee to see if we can mitigate the problem over there as well. Okay, the next problem, invasive plants on Peters Pond. Invasive plants are plants that grow in the pond, usually along the water's edge, that are not native to this area. The plants will spread into the water, they block sunlight, they suck up oxygen, making it difficult for other natural wildlife to thrive. These orange lines that you see on the Peters Pond map up there, those delineate where the invasive species right now has been recorded by the Water Resource Services team. In their 2018 12 ponds report, they did 12 ponds in Sandwich. This team identified 2 invasive plants right near the sand and gravel pit. The common reed and the purple loosestrife pictured here are the culprits. What can we do about this? The WRS suggests removal of these plants to keep them from spreading any further. Our hope is for a few volunteers to help us form a committee to observe this area and get some current data on these plants. Then we'd like to work with the landowner, which would be the sand and gravel pit owner, and the Sandwich Conservation Commission to find a cooperative and proper solution to removing this. Blue foam docks. Okay, can anyone guess why these are bad? They break? Did I hear someone say they break? Yeah, they break, they disintegrate. Okay, yes, these docks are made from a polystyrene foam that will disintegrate over time or be chewed apart by animals. Once this happens, numerous tiny particles enter the water and they wash up along the shoreline. Fish and birds that eat these particles will likely die because their bodies cannot digest them. In 2021, one such dock on Peters Pond succumbed to an aggressive animal chewing and deterioration, littering the water and the shores, causing a nearly impossible mess to clean up. Yes, the picture on the right-hand side is the shoreline of Peters Pond. and that was taken in 2021. The solution to this problem, though, is fairly simple. If you have a dock that uses a bloom foam material or even buoy lines made from pool noodles, please remove them. A more proactive goal would be a no polystyrene float committee to work with the Sandwich Conservation Commission to prohibit this type of flotation on Peters Pond. There are many New England ponds in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine that already have this bylaw in place on their ponds. So this is not an unusual request to ask the Sandwich Conservation Commission to work with us and make sure that these are prohibited from being on the pond. So we're hoping for a committee to help with that. Okay, last on my list of threats to the pond is this proposed 384-unit affordable housing complex located on 64 acres between Peters Pond, Pimlico Pond Road, and Route 130. The Friends of Peters Pond Board has committed to keeping a watchful eye on how the developer is going to handle their wastewater, their sewage, their stormwater, which could subsequently have irreparable damage to our water. Understandably, the town of Mashpee is concerned about these same issues. Mashpee has municipal wells, drinking water, lakes, bays that are all down gradient of this property. Other citizens are concerned about traffic and infrastructure problems as well. With a mission to protect, the Friends of Peters Pond Board has voted to hire Chapter 40B law attorney Dennis Murphy this past August. We have received overwhelming support from our neighbors and local citizens to support having this legal representation. This is the wrong place for a development of this size to reside here, with so many environmental factors are at play. Even though there are currently no permit applications before the town, it never hurts to be proactive. Here are a few things that have been achieved in the past few months. In December, we had a citizens meeting, and we wanted to bring awareness and educate the public about the size and the scope of this project, and probably some of you here were at that meeting. The Mashpee Select Board has sent a letter to the town of Sandwich outlining their serious concerns regarding the groundwater contamination, municipal well contamination, traffic problems that could affect their town if such a large project were to be approved. With the push from some of our board members, a letter from the Sandwich Building Department was sent to the developer to make sure that they obtain the proper permits through NIPDES for any stormwater runoff that could make its way down to our pond or any body of water. In Joint Base Cape Cod, they have also been notified that about the development, and they have notified the town and the developer that they must submit an FAA obstacle evaluation report. This has to be reviewed by the FAA because this property is within 5 miles of an airfield. So the most recent information that we have from televised planning board meetings is that the solar field part of this project is now going to be first. This is speculation of a 5 megawatt solar field to be located near the middle of the site, more towards the Pimlico Pond roadside, as shown on this map. It is important to note that there is no application before the town or the Sandwich or the Cape Cod Commission as of yet for any of these 3 phases. When they do apply, Attorney Dennis Murphy will be notified and reviewing all filings and all documents. So this is, right now, this is my Peters Pond top 5. I have time to take a few questions before I hand it off to Nancy. So Jeff can pass out a microphone if anyone has a question, so that way your question is able to be recorded for our recording. So I'm just going to kind of open it up for just a couple minutes. Does anyone, I know that was a lot of information. I kind of tried to do a quick high-fly overview on those 5 issues. Does anyone have any questions about sampling or volunteering or?
I'm just going to ask you a question.
Wait 1 sec, let me get the microphone. Thank you.
Can this be stopped?
Can this be?
These buildings, this development?
Oh, okay, so the question is, Lori is asking me if this 40B development can be stopped. That's a great question. And as of right now, the state statute that there's a lot of laws that actually are on the developer side more than on the environmental side. So there's no guarantee that it would be able to be stopped. But I think what we need to do is make sure that we can protect the resources that we have in the meantime. Right now, there is not a permit application before the town, but
That would just be a matter of time, though.
it could be just a matter of time. I mean, the other option that, Nancy and I have also talked about, some other towns that don't want to be overdeveloped because the Cape is getting so overdeveloped right now. There are other towns that have band together and actually purchased the land to keep the development from happening, purchase the land from the developer. So that's happened in a couple of towns across the Cape. So that's an idea to, keep in the back of our minds too. And I don't know the price tag, but
It's your lottery tickets.
Yeah.
get your lottery tickets. I think just in Harwich recently, I think there was going to be a large development and the town purchased the land.
And
Yeah.
I'm going to touch on that. Are there land trusts that can purchase this with no?
That I'm not.
Let me.
Do Nancy, you want to answer?
I do. Okay, I want to make sure I'm on. These are such good questions. We called, there's a land trust, and we talked to them about that. We talked to the town about, they have a fund which they can use to buy land. And the answer from the town at the time was there are other pieces of property they're more interested in purchasing. But that doesn't mean, in the end, that doesn't mean they're not going to buy it. We can still, that's why we have our attorney. We're trying to put up as many roadblocks as we can. In fact, one of the roadblocks that we could put up, if you guys look at your agenda, and you are a direct abutter to that property, it's called a flora and fauna. It's on the 4th one down. There's some little QR codes there. Jeff has put together endangered flora and fauna lists that you can look for on your own property if you directly abut that property over there. And you can document that, and it gives instructions about what to do with those images. Basically, you'll send them to Jeff.
Send them to us through the website. Yeah.
Yep, you'll send them to us, and we'll deal with it.
Send them off to NHESB,
So,
which is National Heritage for Endangered Species. Okay, so to stay on the agenda, thank you very much, Lori. Those are great questions.
somebody has a question over there?
Oh,
Sorry,
The gentleman with the hat.
with the hat.
Yeah,
Jeff's going to give you a microphone.
I got a big mouth, I don't need this.
Okay.
What I'm interested in, what effect is this going to have on our airspace for our ships coming in and out of the base?
Yes, we did have a gentleman who works at the FAA on the base raise that concern. And so that's why when Chris was talking about it, they're doing that study. So they have to respond to that. They can't just ignore the fact that we're in the flight path.
yeah,
here.
they have to.
I'm considering the height of these buildings, which are going to be 4 stories.
Exactly.
Right.
And our planes are going to come in at a lower angle.
Right, and they train all summer and all year. So it's really
Yes.
not viable for them to be that high. So they're going to have to answer for that, for sure. And then, did you have a question? Yep.
Yeah, Judy and I were just wondering where the state rep and the state senator, you have a reading on where they stand on all of this stuff. we live in Boston where politics is a contact sport, so I'm
Yeah,
kind of interested in that.
for sure.
Our state rep is Steve Exeros, and he's aware of this development, and he has told us to reach out to him for any help that we need, and we have actually.
And he's aware.
He has given us some help.
And he's come down and walked the property, so he's very aware of
he's
what it
very-
looks like.
Yeah, he's been very helpful. He's eager to do more.
One more question? Here comes the microphone. Yep.
Is it possible to get some type of a petition to at least maybe change the size of the proposal of what they want to do?
That's a great
good question.
and I think I'm thinking maybe once. I know a lot what the town hinges on an application being
Yeah.
presented before the town, and that once that happens, once they actually submit an application to the town to construct any of these phases, I think that's a great time for a petition to come into play.
Yeah. There will be a hearing process, but it won't be until once that application is in, that comprehensive application, they have 30 days to notify abutters and have a hearing. So it's kind of like we're doing as much as we can to front load our defense.
yeah.
But then we have to wait for that structure to come in and then we can hit it. Yep.
I just want to add to that, I'm laughing up, I think, that, I live over at South Sandwich on the other side of the campground. And the only reason I heard about it is because my friend lives almost in the backyard of where this proposal is going. So I'm just wondering how many people actually know what's going on? And is there the possibility of you needing volunteers to go door to door and make people know what's happening? Because I think if the town, the whole town knew, there'd be more of an uprising as to having this put in conservative Sandwich.
Yep, we have started that
agree.
initiative of direct abutters, and around here, we invited the people to the citizens meeting over the winter. That was in the newspaper, but I think it needs to be more of a town effort versus just in our area, so that's a great point. And
Yeah, I just think people are so busy that they don't pay attention.
Yep.
Like I said,
Yeah.
I never would have known, and I was kind of mortified when I went to that meeting.
yes,
So-
exactly.
Yeah, that's.
Yep, so we'd love you guys to
love-
help.
and-
Okay,
yeah,
last
and we-
question, Judy.
Do we know whether Sandwich has other 40B developments in the process, or are they looking to this to actually solve their problem?
I know that there's a project right now with the Wing School, and the town is always trying to make sure that they hit their affordable housing quota. But I think the tricky part to that is only 20 to 25% of the units are going to be affordable. But then you add, this is where the numbers kind of don't get a little crazy, but you add all the units that are, the other 75%, that also brings the ratio of people that live there higher. So I think it makes it very hard for the town to actually reach that 25%. But I think we're going to have to move on. I definitely want to take questions maybe more at the end. I want to kind of stay on our agenda.
Yep.
And
So we're gonna-
So I'm going to hand it.
Can I just throw this up? Can we have a meeting just on the 40B so that we can?
We would love
Okay,
to.
I'd like to back this woman and maybe get petitions
Yep.
out, maybe get information out.
Yep, we're
Sure.
going to talk about that. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And the last
Okay,
thing
show me
is,
how to
does the
move the
town have
slides.
Any land that they can put forth
I
Mm.
for this to make, these are their rules.
yeah.
Right, that's a whole big wad of, that's a
don't-
whole nother issue.
Yeah. I don't feel I can answer that one.
Show me how to move the slides really quick.
Okay, so just hit this arrow.
Okay. Okay, thanks,
There we go.
Chris, and thanks to all of you for those questions.
Okay, thank you so
That's
much.
awesome. Okay, I'm going to go quickly. I'm going to spend a little bit less time than I wanted to because I want to get to Andrew and I want to keep us on time, okay? So if I talk really fast, just pretend it's one of those pharmaceutical
And I'm
commercials.
going to grab my water.
Okay,
But it's all
okay.
important.
So there's me. That's me. You already know. Okay, whoops. All right, let's talk about our board structure. So in order to become a nonprofit organization and open up our bank account, we had to have a board. So we just said, who wants to be on the board? And we kind of begged. And so here's who we have. We have Chris, We have Lee, this is one of our neighbors. We have me, we have Jeff, and we have Joe and Nancy Silva. This could be you. Could be you. Okay, and our neighbor Lee, now that they're spending a little bit more time in California, probably is going to be stepping down. So we are looking for new board members, and we'd love you to consider joining us in our mission. We're looking for people who would like to roll up their sleeves and get to work, as we have several action items, as we found out, that need managers. Okay, so it's not like, I'm just going to be on the board. It's like, we need your help. We meet once a month to discuss projects, make decisions, give updates, and we have a once-a-year meeting. So we'd love you to pray about it, think about it. You can be an officer, you can be a board member. Okay, let's go on to the next big thing. All right, some of you, because you filled out that contact sheet on the website to become members, have received the bylaws in your email. We had to come up with bylaws because we're a nonprofit organization. So we went over that as a board. We're not going to go through all of these right now, but we opted into having members because we like to involve you in our mission. A handful of people cannot take on everything that affects our pond, as we know and as we've heard, so we need you. What are the benefits of membership? Voting on key issues at member meetings like today, an opportunity to serve on the board or become an officer, that would be a nomination, showing your support for the mission. Per our bylaws, which we are voting to adopt today, all voting will be a majority of the members in attendance, which is why you guys are all here. Yay! Okay, so we already sent you the draft. So we've asked you to respond if you got this in an email with either you agree with the bylaws as they are or you had some questions and concerns. We tried to address those before today. We had an overwhelmingly positive response to accept the bylaws as written, and now we'd like to take a verbal vote to approve them. Is there a motion to approve the bylaws as written? Yes. All right. Is there a second motion? We got a lot. All those in favor of approving the bylaws, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. Great. Okay. We're whipping through these things, kids. All right. So I am the treasurer, and I want to just go over our numbers quickly. If you would like to look more in depth into each of these categories, we have a binder right at the back of the room on that table, and you can look to see exactly how much we've spent on what. So I'd like to look at our expenses, our income, and our total. So we have we have our website hosting, which is Wix. That's a monthly expenditure. We had to get startup fees. We have to take PayPal, so that's what that number is. We have charitable donations. It's a fairly large number because we started our initiative to be able to pay for an attorney. Many of you have generously donated to that. We also have a PayPal charitable donation on our website. That is when you just want to donate and support our group, or it could also be wanting to give us funds for the attorney. So our total income is $22,609.18. Our expenses are supplies, things like we have to make photocopies, we have to buy name tags and pens. Printify expense, that is for sweatshirts, swag, right? Getting that set up, putting out all the setup fees in there. We have an attorney expense. This is what we have right now, $73.20. However, $3,500 of this is a retainer. So that is not included in that number, right, Chris?
It is included in the number, but
Yes.
it's money that has not been spent.
That's what we mean. So it's in the kitty.
That's what it means.
So Chris and I did this retainer together, and then we're taking, people's donations are plumping up that fund. Basically, we need a war chest for when this goes to town, right? Okay, website expense right here. General expenses, we have meeting room fees, we have advertising, and we have a little bit of a bank fee, and then we have printing. So our total expenses, $11,587.50. Balance on hand right now is $11,021.68. Any questions about that? Again, you can look in the back for the binder if you want to know more information. Okay, if people want to donate, you can always send people. I even have friends from where we moved from, which is Reno, saying, how can we support your group just because they know me? Isn't that nice? So if you have anyone who doesn't live here, who does want to support our mission, we would love them to be able to do that. Every page on the website has a donate button, and Jeff's made this great little graphic which shows our fundraising goal. it's high because we need that attorney fund. Okay, we had a little fun surprise for you guys. It's a little one-time donation only. If you want to hold these up, Nance, we have printed these 2 logo mugs. We came up with 2 different logos. One looks like this with the pond, and one is like people enjoying the pond. It's like little kids, kind of a little emotional logo. Yeah, bring it up. And so we're offering you guys a mug.
Is it that up there?
It is. It's the little logo. Yep.
This and the other side is like this.
Yep. So it's a 2-sided mug. And if you would like to take one home or gift it, that's what I'm doing. Everybody's getting one of those for Christmas this year. Is $50 will get you 1 mug. More than 50 in increments will get you multiple mugs. So Nancy would love to see you at the back of the room. She's this beautiful donation lady. Okay. So speaking of donations, I would like to talk to you really specifically about donating a little bit monthly or thinking about a one-time donation. I'm not going to go over all the different sizes of donations people have offered, but some have donated $3,500 all the way down to $100 to $10. Every dollar means we can continue our mission, which is to preserve, protect, educate, and advocate for Peters Pond. So if you would like to consider donating to an organization, you know, everybody has their pet organizations they love to support throughout the year, like I love PBS, okay, things like that. We'd love you to consider our group to do that. Okay, I'm going to do a little show and tell. Can you tell I was a teacher? Okay, you might be wondering, what do Prel and Ivory Soap have to do with Friends of Peters Pond? How many of you guys remember this when it comes to the pond? What did we do with this? Anybody?
We watched.
That's right. Everybody walked down, and why did we use ivory? Because it floated, and if you wanted to get exfoliation, just stick it in the sand and rub it on yourself, right? So we don't do this anymore. I remember we came down one summer when I was about 10, I think, and my grandparents said, we don't do that anymore. And that was really fun for us because we used to like lather up and then dive off the raft and like rinse our hair. We could do like hairdos, but we couldn't do this anymore. Why? Because there was a study that showed it was terrible for the pond. So we faded this out, okay? So this is something we don't do anymore. Like if you saw somebody walk down with a shampoo bottle and a bar of soap, what would you do?
Well, then no.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay, here's one more thing I want to show you guys, and then I'm going to introduce Andrew. Okay, these are what? Gardening gloves. Okay, here's some lovely and delicious chemistry that we love to use on our lawns and in our gardens. Okay, why am I wearing gloves? Yeah, this is what we're talking about when we apply it to our property and it rains. Guess where it goes? Right, so we're going to talk about fading this, okay? Okay, so I'd like to introduce Andrew Gottlieb, our speaker. And let me tell you a little bit about Andrew before he comes up. He is the executive director of the Association Preserve Cape Cod. To preserve Cape Cod. He's responsible for determining the focus of APCC's advocacy and educational efforts, implementing APCC's programs like the monitoring program we talked about today, coordinating fundraising and membership activities, and the overall management of the daily operations. Does he have it? Of the organization. Andrew has more than 30 years of environmental protection experience in government and elected terms in municipal office. He has extensive experience working at all levels of government, having served as a local and state and county official, as well as a legislative staff person. A resident of Mashpee, Andrew has served on the Mashpee Board of Selectmen. You also have his email, and one of the little QR codes in the back takes you right to APCC's website. Please join me in welcoming Andrew. Thank you so much. Thanks, Andrew. Oh, to move your slides, it's this one.
Okay. So actually, Chris did as good a job talking about us as I could, so I actually don't have that much to say. So we do a lot of work. I'm going to talk about water for a minute, but in a minute. But we do a lot of work with local groups, and a lot of our strategy is around engaging people around the resources that they care about and promoting organizations such as this one to take some stewardship and ownership of the issues. I can tell you, no group that we've worked with has come as far as fast as yours, and I would not want to be on the wrong side of either one of these two. So that's great. You're lucky to have them, but it's not just them. So heed the call that Nancy made before. You need more people because there's a lot to do. It's time consuming, and if you're working alone, you'll burn out. So you need them. They need you. So all things water. So everything I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to go through it fast, is in one of the handouts we gave you, our State of the Waters report, the larger blue one. And, so I would encourage you, there's a QR code that'll take you to it. You heard a little bit about them today. You can also go to our website. But there's a lot more information. But the highlights here are we evaluate every year using primarily publicly available data, quality of embayments, ponds, drinking water. And we compare it year over year, and we use it to ground truth the work that we're doing and use it to set our public policy agenda. You care about this place. What you're confronting here is pretty similar and typical as to what other people across the region are confronting. And a lot of the solutions to some of your problems go beyond the means of any one particular watershed group to address. And that's kind of where we come in, just try and bring this to a region-wide level and get state-level attention to solve some of the problems that are common and are beyond the means of any one small working group to solve. So, embayments. I know you're a lake group, but real quick on the embayments. 90% of the embayments on Cape Cod fail to meet standards. We did this, started 4 years ago. Then it was 68%. Now it's down to 90. So it's getting worse. Pretty soon it's going to be close to 100. So from the gross level, there's not that much room for it to get worse, right? If you go onto the report, what you'll find is that every south-facing embayment on Cape Cod and all but one on facing Buzzards Bay exhibits poor water quality in the summer. And an increasing number on the north side are as well, which is of concern because the development patterns are different and the tidal exchange is much different. The reason for it, septic waste. 3 problems: septics, stormwater, fertilizers. Okay? In the marine environment, it's nitrogen that drives the problem. Nitrogen, highly water soluble, moves easily through the groundwater. You put it on the soil, you put it in the ground through your septic system, it follows the groundwater and will introduce itself to whatever surface water it comes into contact with first. So if your septic system here, up gradient, goes into Peters Pond, pops up, impacts the pond to some degree, goes back into the groundwater, follows further down, probably goes into Mashpee, Wakeby. Some of it goes down the Mashpee River into Papaneset Bay. Some of it goes back into the groundwater, goes to Papaneset Bay. It all flows downhill. Okay? So septic systems are the primary cause. About 80% of the nitrogen load that's causing these water quality problems comes from septic systems. You can't solve the water quality problems without dealing with the septic waste problem. Okay? But you can make a difference by dealing with some of the easier lower hanging fruit associated with stormwater control and in particular land management practices on your property, your neighbor's property, and commercial properties adjacent to these waterways. You can take some of the nitrogen, some of the phosphorus out of the system, out of the equation by simply don't fertilize your pond or your lawn, because you will fertilize your pond. Okay? You can't solve the problem in its entirety with the alternatives, with dealing with the land application and the stormwater, but you can take some of the edge off. You will have to deal with, and every town on Cape Cod will have to deal with, its septic management problem in order to meaningfully solve water quality problems. When we look at these estuaries, even though we're at 90 and maybe we'll get to 100%, maybe we'll stop at 95 or 96, within the estuaries, there is room for them to individually get worse. Because if you click on the website, what you'll see, and you go into whichever of these embayments you care about, as you zoom in on it, instead of seeing one dot, you'll see multiple dots. The multiple dots reflect the sampling locations. And typically these waterways get bad from the headwaters on down. Okay? So the further away you are from the opening of the embayment, the worse the water quality is. It's getting a lot of nitrogen from the groundwater. In the upper reaches, there's less tidal exchange with cleaner waters in Nantucket Sound, Buzzards Bay, or Cape Cod Bay up in the upper reaches. So those die first, and then it moves on down. And what we're seeing in terms of decline in these estuary resources is that the portion of the estuary that exhibits high water quality is shrinking. It's getting closer and closer to the outlet of the embayment, and the vast majority of the embayment is actually showing poor water quality. That's where we will continue to see decline, even in situations where, Mashpee Sandwich, Mashpee Falmouth, Wacoit, Popponesset Bays, for example, have been red for a long time, but there have been higher quality waters from the mid-bay south. Those are gone. Okay, and that's indicative of continued nitrogen loading impacts over the last couple of years. Ponds. We know less about ponds than we do about estuaries. The sampling programs have been less robust and widespread on the ponds than on the estuaries. So we do at APCC about 150 ponds a year in our cyanobacteria monitoring program. A lot of the data that you're seeing reflected in this report is reflective of what we are getting from our cyanobacteria monitoring program. There is some additional baseline water quality sampling that is going on, and that too is reflected. But we like to get ponds that have at least 3 years worth of data that's no older than 2017. So this map's actually reflecting what's happening now or in the recent past, as opposed to using stale data. What this will tell you is that compared to the 90% that fail on the marine side, about 40% of the lakes we're monitoring year in and year out are exhibiting trouble and declining water quality. There's probably about 60% of them that are marginal, and that some years they tip over, some years they don't. I think you, Chris, said you had a cyanobacteria bloom in Peters Pond 2 years ago, but not last year, right? So some ponds are frequent flyers, reliably have cyano problems year in and year out. Others, some years they do, some years they don't. What that is driven by, we think, is two things drive cyanobacteria blooms. One is heat. So we've done a really exemplary job turning the heat up on the planet, all right? So we've created one of the conditions that these things like. If you look at data from National Seashore and Wellfleet, one of the most undeveloped watersheds on Cape Cod, Gull Pond, has cyanobacteria, and it's 6 degrees warmer in August on average than it was 20 years ago. 6 degrees is a lot. Climate science, we're arguing about a half a degree and a half. 6 is a lot. So our waters are warmer, longer period of time. So we created a warm environment, and then we fed them, right? And we're feeding them mostly phosphorus, and the fresh water tends to drive. It's the other nutrient, the first nutrient on a bag of fertilizer is the phosphorus. There is a relationship with cyanobacteria that we're still trying to figure out between nitrogen and phosphorus more than other freshwater plants. But the phosphorus load tends to be the driver. And as a result, we've created these circumstances where when there is a big rainstorm And one of the other near term now, it's real, don't kid yourself, it's actually happening. Impacts of climate change is we have longer periods of drought broken up by short, intense, heavy rainfall events. So it can be dry for 4 weeks, and then you get 5 inches in an hour. Those 5-inch rainstorms, 4-inch rainstorms, 3-inch rainstorms don't distribute equally across the region. And so the hit or miss aspect of that is what drives the fact that, in our opinion, that some of these lakes end up having trouble one year, don't have trouble another year. A little bit of a random aspect to that. It also depends, did the heavy rainstorm come when the neighborhood lawn guy happened to show up 4 hours beforehand and put a bunch of chemicals on the lawns? Again, lay off the chemicals. So on the cyanobacteria, Chris mentioned, we monitor 150 or so ponds every 2 weeks with greater frequency if there's indications that there's problems. Our map online is updated on a daily basis, 5 days a week at 7 o'clock every night. So if you want the latest information on what's happening on this pond or any other pond that we're monitoring, go to our website, sign up for our e-blast. We'll send you an email when any pond indicates trouble across the Cape, not just yours. So it's a good way to understand what's going on. The other cyanobacteria thing, it's one thing, you can see it, you just get that green scum in the mornings. Stuff tends to float more in the morning than it does in the afternoon. It's highly variable. So just because that scum line actually dissipates, might not be as observable in the afternoon, doesn't necessarily mean that the problem's gone. It's very wind driven. So if the wind changes, it can flip it around, redistribute it. So you need to be mindful of what's going on in the pond. Easy for you all to stay out of the water, a little less easy for your pets. This is a really big issue for pets. Not only because dog goes in the water, opens its mouth, laps up some water. That's one route of exposure. The other more significant route of exposure is most dogs, when they come out of the water, groom themselves, and in grooming themselves, they get a big dose. And it's just simply a body mass index weighting thing, dose times body size. So if they're licking themselves off, they can get a pretty heavy dose. The first indication that you had a pet that's had a toxic exposure is that the dog exhibits symptoms, and by then it's oftentimes too late. So if you think your dog has been exposed to waters that might be cyanobacteria contaminated, rinse them off. It's a pretty easy way to deal with it. Call your vet if you have any concerns about that. Lastly, drinking water. I do this in this order because the drinking water part of the story is the best part, so to not be a complete downer. And then a little bit on a high note, 16 of the 20 water supplies, and yes, we have 20 public water suppliers serving 15 towns. It's a Cape thing. 16 of the 20 met all state and federal drinking water standards, got an excellent score. 2 were good, 2 were poor. One that's really worth noting that was poor was the town of Yarmouth. They had a bacteria problem, and this is unique to Cape this past year, they had an exceedance of perfluorinated compounds, PFAS chemicals, in their finished water. They're the only ones that have popped up finished water over standards. They remediated it by taking the well offline, and it was a good solution. They have to treat it and deal with it, but they were able to eliminate the route of exposure to their residents pretty quickly. That said, all that good news aside, 10 of the 20 public water supply systems did have PFAS compounds in their water, but below the state health standard. So it's out there. And it's out there widely because PFAS compounds are in everything. They are the things that make your raincoat water repellent. It's the things that make your upholstery and your carpeting stain resistant. It's the stuff that's in the food can that keeps the food product that you bought from sticking to the sides of the can. It's in the aerosols. They're everywhere. There's 16,000 of them. Individual chemicals in that family. We regulate 6. okay? So there's a long way to go. And Massachusetts regulates 6, and that's 6 more than 48 other states regulate, okay? So there's the good news, there's the bad news. But the story behind drinking water is actually instructive. 40-something years ago now, a little more, there was a general public policy consensus that the protection of drinking water, existing and future supplies, was a valid public purpose. And towns began to buy up lands to service future water supplies, implemented what's known as wellhead protection zoning around those wells to prohibit the most hazardous land uses from being close to the wells. We managed with the intent of maintaining water quality, and the results are pretty obvious, that with a hiccup here and a hiccup there on the level, we've done a very good job of that. Contrast that to what's happened to the freshwater and marine surface water systems, where not only did we not prioritize, we did everything possible to degrade those systems. We intensely developed the landscape around them. We altered the landscape around them and applied chemical products for aesthetic purposes that were directly harmful to the functioning of those resources. And we chose a method of disposing of our waste that is maybe a little bit more sophisticated than digging a hole in the backyard and dumping everything in it, but not much, okay? So it's no wonder that we have ended up where we've ended up. And the fact that it took this long is reflective of the resilience of these resources. They took a lot of punishment for a long time before they kind of broke. And it's another example, and we see it all the time. We see it especially in climate science now, where you get to these tipping points. You abuse a resource, abuse a resource, abuse a resource. It seems to be able to take it, unless you really know what to look for, and then all of a sudden they collapse. And as they collapse, they create these self-reinforcing sort of cycles of doom, that the manifestation of the problems actually contribute to the problems getting worse. Okay, so in the marine environment, if you've been out in one of our estuaries, in the past it used to be hard sandy bottoms, jump out of the boat, sandy bottom, good substrate for things to live in, eelgrass to grow in, fish to have habitat. Now you've got muck. Well, where'd the muck come from? The muck came from years and years of over-fertilization of the water column, which resulted in too much algae. The algae dies at the end of the year, sinks to the bottom. Some of it breaks down, most of it doesn't, and it creates this overlay, this thick layer that eliminates all the good habitat. And every year, that feeds on itself. You get algae in the water, it makes the water warmer. We feed it, we create more algae, which then goes on and adds to the layers of muck on the bottom. In the freshwater systems, we're contributing nitrogen and phosphorus to the algae that's growing. That settles down to the bottom. One of the kickers on the freshwater world is that the phosphorus, which is driving a lot of this, moves differently and behaves differently than nitrogen. It will bind to soil particles and to sediment particles. So there's a huge sediment load, phosphorus load in the sediments in all these ponds. When the bottom of the ponds lose their oxygen, there's a chemical reaction that allows the phosphorus to unbind itself from the sediments, reintroduces up into the water column, feeds the next bloom, feeds the next cycle, dies, goes back down, makes it a little bit worse, and over and over and over again. So what is causing these ponds to becoming unoxygenated down at the bottom? All the things we're doing to contribute, plus we come back to heat. So one of the great joys of swimming in one of these ponds is warm at the top, go down a few feet, it's nice and cool, right? That's called thermocline. What's happening is that those thermoclines are getting deeper, thicker, and more stable because it's hotter out. So you'll notice in August you have to go further down to get to the colder water. The persistence of that thermocline separates the bottom of the pond from the top layers of the pond. There's a lot of mixing and oxygenation that goes on in the surface of the ponds as the primary source of oxygen, in addition to the plant generation. And when you separate those bottom layers from that surface mixing for a long period of time, the oxygen gets depleted at the bottom, kicks all that phosphorus back up. So if you, again, this isn't a climate talk, but if you don't think we're living with the impacts of what we've done to the climate, you're looking at one of the manifestations of it out here. Perhaps one of the more benign manifestations of it, but a manifestation of it nonetheless. So we're seeing that in the lakes. That's causing some problems. That will impact how we think about how to manage and mitigate the problems we're seeing in these ponds. Because in all cases, you want to eliminate the external loading. You don't want to put more nitrogen, more phosphorus in the pond. Some of these ponds that have a lot of phosphorus kicking up from the bottom, you got to do something in the pond as well to begin to see improvements. And we're trying to figure out now which characteristics mark a pond as being externally load-driven, which one's being internally load-driven, and what are the strategies that one would implement in both of those situations. The one thing we already know to be true is, regardless, you want to minimize and eliminate the external loading, which goes back to lay off the fertilizer, and you got to do something about the wastewater. Okay? A little bit on septic systems. Septic systems were designed for one singular purpose, and it's a good one. It's to keep people from being exposed to bacteria and pathogens. So they do a really good job of that. They don't take out phosphorus. They don't take out nitrogen. They're not designed to. Brand new, off the shelf, put in yesterday, works the way it was designed to septic system, is a very effective conduit of nutrients to the groundwater. Once it's in the groundwater, it affects our water resources. Septic system that's functioning well, I mean, probably some of us remember, don't go over that part of the yard in August because that's squishy over there, right? That's a failed septic system, right? And a failed septic system or cesspool would have surface breakout and would expose you to pathogens. Bad thing. So the septic code was upgraded in 1994. Prohibited cesspools, although we still have a bunch of them, and created this system where we improved the public health protection associated with bacteriological exposure by relying on septic systems, and we created a system that, by design, destroyed our water resources. Okay? The existing Title V code is the cause of most of our problems. It's not the solution. There are changes under discussion initiated by DEP during Governor Baker's time, now being considered with the new administration, that would change the septic rules in ways that I think, and we as an organization think, are very positive. They will require alternative septic systems that do reduce nitrogen. They don't do anything for phosphorus because there isn't anything. There's no off-the-shelf technology even close to general use that does anything for phosphorus. Okay, so the focus of these regs changes around nitrogen, which is great, really help the estuaries, not going to do a hell of a lot for the lakes. But the real emphasis of the regs that DEP's put out is not to get everybody to upgrade their septic systems, because even if everybody did upgrade their septic system and put in these nitrogen-reducing septic systems, it wouldn't reduce nitrogen load sufficiently to address the water quality problems in our estuaries. It would make things less bad. It would not make them good. The real way to get them better, and the real way to get nitrogen and phosphorus reductions in the ponds, is to have a municipal scale wastewater treatment solution that targets the areas that contribute these loadings to our water bodies, and it's a sewer system. It's nothing fancier than a sewer system. This is not curing cancer. It's not going to Mars. It ain't that hard. Building sewers is a known way to deal with things. Building wastewater treatment plants is not complicated. It's pricey, but it isn't complicated. And it solves the problem of nutrient loading from waste disposal to the vast majority of these water bodies because it brings the load down to zero. It's got to go somewhere, and where it goes is a challenge. But if you sewered the pond, the shoreline of Peters Pond, and it goes over to the base, as far as Peters Pond's concerned, it's problem solved in terms of external loading. And that's true of a lot of places. There's always some away place that's a problem, or there's an issue, but you do have the ability to move loadings around into the areas that can handle them away from the most serious or sensitive areas. So the DP regs, despite what you might have heard in some places, are really about getting the towns on the hook to solving 75% of the problem in 20 years. Let's put that in context for a minute. A lot of the talk you get from some of my friends, more of my former friends, in municipal government is, oh, we can't do this in 20 years, it's too aggressive. We've known there's a problem, documented problem in our estuaries since the 1980s. Under these regs, you'd have to get 75% of the way towards fixing that by 2050. Okay? So I don't know when 1980 to 2050 became a rush or too fast, but come on. It's an absurd notion. I will say the town of Sandwich has taken a pretty responsible posture on these regs. My town, Mashpee, didn't open its mouth about them, which, given what they might have said, is probably a good thing. Barnstable was great about it. Eastham was great about it. Some other towns, yeah, not so much. Not so much. They've taken pretty irresponsible positions on it, and they've actually spent a lot of time talking to their residents about the requirement to upgrade existing systems without mentioning the fact that under the regs, the obligation to the individual to upgrade is eliminated by the town putting itself on a 20-year schedule to implement the problem. That part they kind of forgot to mention. So it's a big deal. It's going to get settled sometime this summer, my understanding of the administration's schedule. I have an idea what the schedule is. I don't know what the regs are going to say yet. So something to really pay attention to. Anyway, there's a lot you can do around your pond that you can deal with as individuals. At some point, you're going to have to get the town involved. The town's going to have to decide what it's going to do about collection and treatment. Sandwich has, begun, focus on it. They're putting a lot of their eggs in the basket of being able to utilize the facility at the base. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. I don't know. But you're getting to the point where the town needs to decide and get started. And these regs are going to force that conversation, as they should. Anyway, that's my big overview. I'll have time for it. Is there anything else you want me to touch on?
I just didn't know if you want to take any questions.
Sure.
Anyone have any questions?
Sure. Yeah.
I was just wondering, could you possibly tell me where the origination of the aquifer is for Sandwich?
So the Sandwich,
I was told that it was coming from New Hampshire.
no, it doesn't. This whole idea is an underground river. No, I know. The underground river doesn't exist. All right. Cape Cod is a unique area in that it's what's designated as what's known as the sole source aquifer. All right. All of our water, fresh water, comes from precipitation that lands on the ground and finds its way into the ground. That's it. So we are a self-contained island for the purposes of water. So basically, this area through here and all the way around is fine sand and gravel. Up here, Sandwich Mashpee, the aquifer is about 60 feet thick, or 300 feet thick, I'm sorry. About 300 feet thick. You go down several feet, the pond here is a reflection of the groundwater level.
Would that runoff from that lake next to the old town hall have anything to do with that well being contaminated?
Which well?
The one in Sandwich?
Probably not. Probably not. So all of our water comes from rain and snow melt, okay? We get about 42 inches of rain a year. About half of that makes it back down into the aquifer to recharge. Once the leaves are out, groundwater does not get higher. Groundwater starts to go down. And you watch your shoreline. Well, your shoreline is a really good reflection, especially in these ponds that don't have a river outlet that gets manipulated for fish passage. Gives you a really good indication of where the groundwater is.
Well, the reason why I ask is because you can see the water coming from the pond, coming down a small fall.
Yep.
And it leads right toward the where you get your well water.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the specifics of that particular location. So, it could be, I'm not sure what kind of problems they're experiencing there. But most of our water, there's a mound in here that the high point and water radiates down. So with the so-called Upper Cape Water Supply Reserve on the northern 15,000 acres of Joint Base Cape Cod is the primary source of recharge for the groundwater that supplies drinking water to Bourne, Falmouth, Mashpee, Sandwich, Barnstable, and a little bit of Yarmouth. So the protection of that land area is of paramount importance to the ongoing water quality that you see for drinking water supply. It also happens to be where our friends of the National Guard thought would be a really good place to put a machine gun range that the EPA has just determined that, in fact, APCC and 1,000 other people that commented on the proposal were, in fact, right, that it does represent a major threat to the preservation of the public drinking water supply. And we're going to be going through a process to get public comment on that over the next 6 weeks. But there is no underground river.
Anybody else? Questions? For Andrew? Groundwater? Sewer? Septic?
All right, I have to throw it out.
Okay.
Is there any rules, bylaws, anything that stops or prohibits people who live on the water from using, say, Chemlon and so forth?
No. So the question was, are there any rules that prohibit the use of Chemlon on property owners adjacent to the lake? So in its infinite wisdom, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts preempted local authority to establish rules and regulations for fertilizer application. 8 towns on the Cape passed bylaws restricting fertilizer use before the preemption came in place. The others who didn't can't. And there are state rules to be generous. They are designed without an understanding of the unique nature of our soils and the ability of chemicals to move in our soils. It's different here.
Yeah.
It just is. And so the state rules don't work very well for us. The town of Orleans, town of Nantucket, and Harwich had a vote Tuesday, and I'm ashamed to say I don't know how it turned out, on a citizen petition to ask the legislature to allow them to ban fertilizer applications. Not only ban fertilizer applications, but also ban the sale of fertilizer products in their town. Those stand zero chance of passing the legislature. We are encouraging towns to do it because we think that if enough towns say we want special rules, that there will be a enough pressure to enable us to get a conversation with the Commonwealth about coming up with rules that are Cape specific. But you don't need the ban for you to stop.
Right.
The other thing I'll do is just irritate, I saw the guy driving around one of those mosquito truck control things today, so put it in mind, and it bugs the hell out of them when I talk about this. But mosquito and tick spraying, bad idea. Bad idea. Doesn't work very well, and it's poison. And it doesn't matter if it's an organic poison or a synthetic poison. Poison's poison. Anything that ends in CID is a poison, and it will kill indiscriminately that which it comes in contact with. So the dead bee, the dead caterpillar really doesn't care whether you killed it with a petroleum-based product or an organic product, because it's dead. So, you know, all those caterpillars that might eat holes in your leaves, they feed the birds.
Right.
So a typical black-capped chickadee family, mom and dad are going to get, they're bringing caterpillars to their young, on average, every 3 minutes, all day, every day. They need 5,000 caterpillars to bring those birds up to fledging. If you spray your yard and eliminate the caterpillars, then mom and dad have to fly to your neighbor's yard or your neighbor's yard, and all of a sudden that 3-minute round trip becomes a 5-minute round trip. Some of those birds will die. So if you like the birds, lay off the poisons. If you don't want a green pond, don't have a green lawn. And there's a lot of good stuff in the handout we gave you about alternative landscaping practices that will give you a very nice looking yard. We're not talking some bombed out wasteland here. That will look good and will provide a multitude of environmental services to the bees, bunnies, and critters that rely on it. And you know, we'll take a little bit of pressure off and we'll make you a healthier pond. Sure.
Anybody else?
No, I just want to make a comment about the healthier lawns, because I read in the APCC newsletter about planting clover.
Yep.
And this year I've actually canceled my lawn service, and it's an experiment.
Don't ask.
I'm trying to do the clover and those fish with the bees and the butterflies and all that stuff.
Yeah, clover's great. Clover's a natural, you know, occurring plant. It has a symbiotic bacteria that lives in its root system that actually fixes nitrogen out of the atmosphere. So you know, it's a non-water soluble form of nitrogen. So you're feeding, huh? You don't have to mow it. It can stay low.
And hardly any water.
And it doesn't have, so I got a mixed yard like that. Last year was dry as hell, right? My yard was pretty green. Between the moss and the clover, you know, the grass went dormant, but the other things stayed green. And it all came back. It all came back. Everything's green and lush and happy, so.
And whether it's organic, when you go back to fertilizer, whether it's organic fertilizer or synthetic fertilizer.
Doesn't really matter.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't really matter.
So if you're using organic fertilizer, it's still going to be bad
Right.
for the pond.
So, you know,
Yeah.
if you want to do stuff, you know, like amend your soil with compost and like, you know, it brings nutrients into that environment, but they're less water soluble, and you'll build your soil, and your plants will be happier. And in result, you know, if you put in plants that are native to Cape Cod, they're native to Cape Cod because they don't need that rich fertilization and water. Plants that are native and happy on Cape Cod are used to low nutrient soils and sandy soils. And so you can break that cycle by what you plant. And in fact, it'll save you money. You know, the guy at the lawn service, their economic interests are the opposite of yours. Yeah. Their economic interest is driven by how often they can come and do something at your house. So if they fertilize the lawn and it grows, then they can come back more frequently and cut it. It doesn't make them bad people, just their business model is counter to your interests, and it also turns out it's counter to the interests of your pond that you care about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have something for you.
Oh, okay, yeah, you can take this.
Andrew. Okay, all
Hang
right.
on.
Speaking of swag, how many of you guys still have your number? Yeah, I know we're a little over, but we don't have, do we have time to do a drawing?
Yeah.
I guess we do. Okay, who has the little shaker with all the numbers in it? Is it back here? It's over there. It's over there, okay.
I'll grab it.
So grab your number. A couple closing comments, you guys, listen up, please. I know we're done, but 2 more things. If it has been, when something, I say like, we need volunteers, we need to have committees, we need to have managers of projects, we need board members. Sometimes your heart starts to beat a little bit quickly, like it might be you. So if that happened, we would love to talk to you about all of those things after the meeting. Please don't rush out when we're done. We have some beautiful refreshments over there. We've got coffee, lemonade, all kinds of yummy stuff. We have food. If you want to talk to us about other things you can do to support the pond, to support, we call it FOPP, Friends of Peters Pond. We have stuff to do. So let's, without any ado, grab your number.
Yep, grab your number.
And we are going to pull the number.
Okay. You want to pull it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, shaky, shaky.
If the person isn't here, we're going to pull another.
We're going to keep going because you must be present to
We
win.
have 30 people here.
Okay, who is number 3? Number 3.
Oh, he's
Oh,
up
Reed.
there. Okay.
What's his name?
Bill.
Bill. You won. Bill. All right.
Okay.
Bill, you win a sweatshirt. All right. Okay. I'm gonna do this. Congratulations, Bill. Okay, we have one more.
One more.
Okay, I'm going to pick number 14. Oh my God. It's you! Yay! All right. All right, we got 2 sweatshirts. Congratulations. Yes. Okay, guys, I have one more drawing, and I don't know if anybody wants the beautiful ivory silver pearl. I'm gonna pull a number, and you can use it for your white elephant prize at Christmas. Number 17 gets the pearl and the ivory. Who's number 17? Anybody? All right, woo! You can reject it. Let's go to the next number. He said no. Okay, last one. You gotta take it. If this is you, number 30.
Oh, 30 might not be here.
Okay, 30, forget that. Okay,
it?
number 4. Look at you guys are winning! Hey, look at that! Put it in the guest bathroom. Oh, you are welcome. Okay, guys, I really would love to thank you for coming today. Couple things.
We got mugs in the back. We got refreshments, as you know.
Yep. 2 more things I wanted to say.
One second.
Hold on, you guys. One more idea that came to me when Andrew was speaking is what else can we do on a personal level? What is going into our septic system in our home? And our family has decided to do a no chemical-free personal care and cleaning products. So think about what you're cleaning your home with. Think about what you're using for soap. We're not using ivory. Think about what you're using for your shampoo, all of your personal care products and your cleaning products. Those all have, if it has fragrance, you guys, that is plastic. That's why Febreze makes your house smell so good for so long. It's because it's plastic. It goes in your fabric. So that's another thing you can do. I really want to thank you guys for coming out today. Thank you for your attention. And again, we have recorded this, so if you want to rewatch anything, if you want to send it to your friends, please do so. Thank you so much. We'll see you next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.